Well, the CIA director is in Poland today, meeting with leaders from Israel and Qatar. They're looking to restart negotiations to free more of the hostages still being held by Hamas. That comes as we learn more about the 3 hostages who were mistakenly killed by Israeli forces in Gaza, the 3 men in their 20s who were waving a white flag at the time. And we're also hearing more of the accounts of some of the women who've been held hostage, who say they suffered sexual abuse at the hands of Hamas. And Michal Herzog is the First Lady of Israel. She joins us right now. She's been working for weeks now to try to bring more attention to the alleged sexual violence that's been committed by Hamas. So we thank you for being here. And before we talk in detail, ma'am, about your efforts on this, I want to ask you a question about the news of the day, because I do think it's related. These negotiations supposedly are starting up again, maybe to free some of the hostages. And we say it's been some of those hostages who are alleged to have suffered some of the worst abuse, the female hostages. So the first question would be, is enough being done, in your view, with so many hostages still being held in Gaza, to get them out?
I do hope that the negotiations do bring the hostages back home and alive and well. We're very worried. And I do hope that the get-together of the Israelis, Qataris, and the CIA will bring some news. And we just got a new film today, a video of 3 elderly hostages held by Hamas. They don't look well. These are elderly men. They need their medications. They weren't even allowed to get medication through the Red Cross. So we're very worried.
What about a pause, another one in the fight? I mean, you've worked in your career as a lawyer. I know you've done mediation work. What about more negotiation, more talking now, and less fighting? Would that help? And do you think, that's what so many people around the world are calling for? What do you say to those calls?
You talk about negotiations. Usually negotiations are held with people, states, entities that you're able to reach agreements with. As we see and we know, Hamas is not such an entity. It is an evil force. It does not work. And agree to the values that we all feel, that even in wartime, one has some sort of legal bindings, right, some legal agreements. This is not something that we can reach with Hamas. So you're not talking to a regular enemy.
To the point about what you describe as gender-based sexual crimes, as I said at the beginning, this is something that you've been talking about so much, and you think that more people should be talking about it the way you are. I noticed there was on the program 60 Minutes here in the U.S. over the weekend, a woman who had been held hostage, name was Yardan, who was interviewed. Now, she wasn't personally, she says she wasn't personally raped in captivity, but because it was in her mind, because so many other people had reported that they were, or it was just, she couldn't stop thinking about it. And here's what she told 60 Minutes. Let's listen.
I was in pajamas, and my clothes tried to swipe off my body, and it was one of the most frightening moments, because my thoughts were, even if they didn't have that intention, now they might have, and I'm half naked.
Yeah, she's there, and it's all she could think about, and I know it's all, you want people to think more about, right? Talk about the efforts that you're trying to get this issue more attention that it's already getting.
So let me tell you, last week I had a meeting with all the families of the women still held hostage in Gaza. Some of them are very young women. Their families are very, very worried, because we know that the atrocities committed on October 7th are maybe continuing as they are held. The gender-based violence is continuing now on a daily basis as these women are held in captivity. We don't know. We will not know for sure until they come back. what is being done to them. And the families I met are very worried. We don't have to imagine too much. When you think about young women, the possibility of them being raped, you know what the result can be. Time is running out. They have to be back.
How many women do you know are still being held? How many women are still being held in Gaza?
I think it's 16 now.
Okay.
As one of the bodies of the hostages was recovered.
Now I
just came back from visiting their family.
You just visited their family, and so that would make the number 16. You wrote this piece, it was a few weeks back. I'll put up the headline. It's from Newsweek, and the headline was "The Silence from International Bodies Over Hamas's Mass Rapes is a Betrayal of All Women." You were the author of this opinion piece. It seemed to me, in reading that, you were going after, it says international bodies, but in particular the United Nations. So is more being done? Has there been any improvement in recent weeks on this issue from these international bodies, in particular the UN?
So it took UN women 8 weeks to be able to put in one phrase the words condemnation, Hamas, gender-based violence against Israeli women. It took them 8 weeks to put this phrase together. I think that organizations that were set up with the purpose of protecting women in conflicts, of protecting human rights, these organizations should have realized that what was seen, and we had witnesses, and we had first responders describing in detail what they found. It took them 8 weeks to put one phrase of condemnation. So that's, we're moving forward. Since the condemnation came a few days after my op-ed, I'm glad, if one can say glad about a situation like this, that they finally reached that decision. Now they have to act upon it and not just pay lip service. Right.
A long time in coming just to talk about it. More needs to be done more broadly on a subject that we've talked a lot about, that maybe more needs to be done as well. Just the global rise in anti-Semitism. Here in the United States, we've talked about it through the prism of what's been happening on college campuses. Again, have you seen a change? Do you think as awareness grows that there's been improvement on that front? I mean, what would you say about what's been happening around the world, again, in particular on American college campuses?
So the situation, and as I hear also from young students, Jewish students on campus, is that they feel that the rallies against them are getting more violent. And I do hope that the heads of the campuses, of the colleges, of the universities realize that they have to voice their moral voice as well. All students belong to campuses. And I think that many of the students that protest do not necessarily understand the meaning of sympathizing with Hamas. They don't understand. They feel that because it's the underdog, they may have to protest against what Israel is fighting for. But they don't really understand. The Hamas is holding the Gazan people as hostages as well. Right. They bring on all this atrocities against their own people, and they don't care. They don't care. They take them as human shields, and they do not give them the humanitarian aid that is now coming in every day. They actually take it away from their own citizens. So I think the protesters do not always understand what they're saying. Right.
All right. That is Michal Herzog. She's the First Lady of Israel. And, ma'am, we thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.